Hi everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to make these 3 cards that have a quarantine or social distancing theme using 2 new stamp and die sets from Honeybee Stamps. So this is the Hang in There stamp set and it has accompanying dies. And in a second I will show you the Paper Hug stamp set. And the great things about these stamp sets are that not only are they perfect if you want to send missing you or thinking of you cards to loved ones as we're all across the world dealing with this quarantine, 50% of the profits will go directly to Feeding America, which is a charity that is doing wonderful things to help food banks across America right now during these uncertain times. So not only will you be able to make beautiful cards for your loved ones, you'll also be supporting a really important charity. So let's go ahead and get started with our first card. And for this card, I'm using the toilet paper roll that is part of the Hang in There stamp set. And I am just going to stamp it on a piece of Arches cold press paper. And I'm using distress ink and antique linen to stamp the images. And I'm just arranging them in kind of a scattered pattern across the piece of cardstock. And this is probably, I think, a 4.5 by 6 inch piece of cardstock, and we're going to cut it down to an A2 size card by the time we're done with this tutorial. So to start, I'm going to start by coloring in the little toilet paper rolls, and I'm going to color each section of the toilet paper separately just to allow each of the sections to dry before I go and add color to another section so that they don't bleed into each other. So the first part that I'm going to color in is this little flap or piece of toilet paper that's kind of hanging off on the side. And I am going to use 4 different colors for this card. So the first was Payne's Gray, and then this one I think is Bloodstone. These are all watercolors by Daniel Smith. And you can use, any watercolors that you like and any color schemes that you like. But I was kind of going for like a kind of gray, kind of brownish, bluish, greenish theme, I guess. That's kind of how I was feeling that day. So this color here that I'm using is Serpentine. And this is going to be the first layer that we add to our little images. So I'm just going to use a very, very light wash of the color. And I'm going to try to stick to just these 4 colors as I'm coloring in a little rolls of toilet paper here. This one is Mayan Dark Blue that I'm using on this 4th roll. And I think a cool idea would be maybe if you wanted to use all the same color but use different values of the same color to have a nice monochromatic look, you could also color all these little rolls in white using some like warm grays or some cool grays to add the shading. So lots of different ideas here. I guess if you're in a real bright, cheery mood, you could color them in rainbow colors. Okay, so now moving on to this part of the coloring, I'm just coloring in the little oval, which is where the little hole in the toilet paper roll is. And then we are going to come back in and add a second coat over that first little sheet of toilet paper that we colored in earlier. And to do this, I'm just adding some water down, and then I'm going to drop some darker color into it just let it bleed a little bit, just to kind of deepen the color in this area. And I was just having fun when I was doing this. It was kind of a real therapeutic project to work on. I wasn't really thinking that much. I was just dropping in the color, adding some water, dropping in some more color, just watching it go where it wanted to go and just taking my time, because I guess, now in quarantine, that's one benefit that we all have. We have a little bit more time on our hands for kind of slowing down and working on, projects like this. So now for this last one, I'm just adding in my dark color, and then I'm just going to blend it outwards by adding some water onto my brush to do that. And I was experimenting a little bit here. I wanted to see what it would look like if you made that little crease much darker than the rest of the sheet. I wanted to see if it made it look more like it was folding over. And I think it did. So Now, moving along to the next phase of coloring in our little rolls, we're going to color in the top parts. And to do that, I'm going to apply my color along the edges of the stamp and then blend inward towards the roll. And I'm experimenting a little bit with leaving white space in my watercoloring. So I'm leaving a little bit of white between the whole part and then the top of the toilet paper, just to see if it makes the image look a little bit more interesting or not. And I'm going to try that again with this little roll here, just applying my darkest color right along the stamp edge and then blending it inwards, leaving a little bit of a white center or white ring around the hole. So let's look at that one more time, and then we can move on to the next and final phase of coloring in our little toilet paper rolls. And this last part of the coloring is probably the simplest part. I'm just going to trace over the stamped lines with my watercolor, and then I'm going to just blend it all inwards with my brush and a little bit of water. So it's just real simple. So you just add some color to where the stamped line is. So we have like the little rectangle, and then we have that perpendicular line or horizontal line down the front of the toilet paper roll, and we just color those in and then just blend it inwards. And if you want, you can leave a little white space in the center like I did here, just to give a little more interest to your image if you like. And let's just do one more, and then we can move on to the next phase of putting the card together. So this probably took me about an hour to color, but again, it was just like a real nice, enjoyable project that I worked on, just kind of looking and watching like how pretty the different colors were and how they work together. So again, it's more a labor of love, really. So if you're short on time, then maybe, you can use some alcohol markers to color these in, or you could just make the rolls white and then add minimal shading, and that would be another quick way to get the card done. Okay, so now we're going to stamp a few sentiments to add to the card, and I'm just going to stamp my sentiments in black VersaFine ink onto Arch's cold pressed paper, and then I'm going to cut them down, and then we're going to round the corners of our card. I just love my corner rounder. It's like one of my favorite card making tools. It just makes cards look nice and soft, and I think watercolor cards especially look nice with the rounded edges, the soft colors. And I'm just going to arrange our little sentiments around the card. So it says, well, crap, this stinks, I miss you. And I think it's just really, really perfect for a quarantine card. So that is card number 1. So let's move on to card number 2. And for card number 2, I'm going to stamp the little bunny from the Hang in There stamp set. And again, I have my Arches cold pressed paper, and I have some distress ink and antique linen, and we are going to make a little brown bunny here. And we have that little kind of grayish purplish bunny up in the right hand corner. That was a watercolor fail, but I left it in because it's part of the actual image that we're going to use for the card, so there's no way to take it off. And sometimes it's good to see that, a first try doesn't always work out the way that you expect, and you end up with like, a weird little purpley bunny up there. Although I guess I could have saved him if I wanted to. I just gave up and decided to try with this little brown bunny. So for the brown bunny, I'm just adding the second layer of color now, and I'm just going to let it bleed inwards, and then take some water and then blend all of that out towards the center. So we have a real nice soft look here. And then one of the unfortunate things about using the distress inks to stamp is that you will have to reapply the little features of the little critters back in once the image dries, but I'll show you how to do that in a second. So I'm just going to cover the little board that he's holding with some turquoise, a real light wash I'm adding here, and I'll add a little shading in the bottom right hand side. Now for his eyes, I'm just taking some black watercolor. You could use a black marker or a black pen as well. I'm just adding back in his eyes. Then I'm going to add his little nose in as well with some pink watercolor. You could use a watercolor pencil or just a regular colored pencil as well if you're more comfortable. And then we'll just add his little mouth in. And just deepening up the eyes there. And that's going to do it. So here is our second card. I'm going to show you how I made the background in card number 3. And I love the sentiment, wish I could see you, but you know, social distancing. That's the story of all of our lives right now. Okay, so let's move on to our third and final card. So for this, I stamped the little heart with the outreached hands from the Paper Hugs stamp set. And I am just going to add some pink watercolor to the background of the heart. So it's like a nice, real pretty pink peachy shade, and then we will color in the little hands, and then we'll move on to the background for the card. So I'm just, again, this was another exercise where I was just playing and having fun. I started with a light wash of pink and then added some deepened color around the edges and under the images and just kind of let it bleed where it wanted to go. And for the arms, I'm going to use some burnt umber, I think this is, for our hand at the top. And then I'm going to use buff titanium for our little hand that is reaching out from beneath that arm. And I'm just going to deepen up the color on one edge a little bit and then blend it out with some water. I had a little bit of difficulty getting in and coloring in those little fingers, but I think it's okay. I think it works just fine. And this is the buff titanium that I'm using, which is a good color for flesh tones if you are watercoloring and you want to make people. And now we're going to move on to our background. So this is a really fun and easy watercolor background. So you're just going to start by making some wavy lines along all 4 edges of the card. And I'm using sap green here. Or maybe this is greenish yellow, one or the other, but it's a real pretty yellow green. And then we're just going to add some little leaves, and to make a leaf you just have you start with a little pointed tip, and then you lay your brush down a little bit so that it's flat against the paper for the center, and then you lift up, and then that makes the bottom of the leaf so that you get this nice leaf shape. I guess I can't, yeah, it's a leaf shape. That's what it is. And I'm just going to add those little leaves all along all 4 edges. And if you want, it's also a really cool look if you just want to do the left side and then the bottom. That is another nice way to do this background, but I wanted to cover the whole background. Again, it's just playing and enjoying my time with my watercolors. Now we're going to add some little flowers. And I'm just taking a real light wash of pink, and I'm just making some little wiggly scribbles in 3s for the most part. And then I'm just going to deepen up the color with a more concentrated version of that same pink and just add it to the center and let it bleed out. And it gives this real pretty look. Like it looks a little bit like honeysuckle maybe. Maybe it looks like a cherry blossom. Not sure, but it's just a real pretty flower. And I wasn't really thinking much as I did it. I just kind of let the scribbles go, and then I just dropped in my darker color like towards the center and let it bleed where it wanted to. And you end up with these little flowers with these flowing petals or these little buds. It's just real pretty look, real fun and easy to kind of just sit back and create. And this was pretty quick too. It probably took about 20 minutes. So I'm rounding the corners. We're going to use the It's All Gonna Be Okay stamp from the Paper Hug stamp set. And then I just popped up our little heart on some foam tape, and we're just going to put the whole thing onto a card base, and that's it. So that is our third card. So let's take a look at the other 2 cards that we made earlier in the video. These are all great cards to send to friends and family that you can't see right now because of quarantine, just to let them know that you're on their mind and you give them a little piece of you to hold on to and to hug when, you yourself can't be there. So that's all I have for you today, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I really hope you check out these 2 stamp sets. They're really adorable, and they're for a great cause. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you again soon in another video.